my good friend, a guy who I used to pester every Monday on something I saw on Sunday. He's Mike Pereira, NFL on Fox rules analyst. Mike, how we doing today, Mike?
No, really. Now, what's this about? You don't know.
What do
I
you,
is what?
no, Mike, you know that. I have to tease you because every Monday or even Sunday nights, rules that I saw or plays that I saw, I always needed clarification from you.
Well,
And,
guess what?
yes.
You'll need more clarification from me this year because while things I think in the area of a catch are somewhat clear,
Yes.
I think there's the confusion now as this lower to the head initiating contact. So I think I'm insured of a job for another couple of years because we'll have this confusion.
Yeah. So Al Riveron's going to be the one under fire, and you got to hopefully explain when people come to you, Mike, of what is this actual rule. We're calling it the targeting rule. I know it's different than college, but could you, in your terms, kind of explain what the NFL is thinking with passing this rule?
Well, obviously they took a look at analytics. They took a look at the data that showed that there were more concussions this year than the past, and so they decided to take the big step, which they have been talking about, Kirk. I'm telling you, since the 2005. I mean, I used to sit in my office in New York in the command center, and they would come back to me and say, as we're looking at these defenseless players and leading with the crown of the helmet, let's just make it illegal, period, because the rule book currently, back in the early 2000s, supports it, because there is a rule on the books right now in Rule 12 that says, a player is prohibited from what's called using any part of a player's helmet or face mask to butt, spear, or ram an opponent violently or unnecessarily. So the powers to be who were scrambling then fairly early on in the concussion front, we're saying let's make all helmet contact, leading with the helmet contact, a foul. And I would fight it and say it's impossible. It's impossible to take the head out of the game to that degree. And then I think in Dean Blandino's day after me, with this rule being in there that wasn't being enforced, he said, let's take it out of the book.
Right.
And they said, no, it's a player safety issue. And now they have come full circle and said, we're going to enforce it with new language that says you can't initiate contact with your helmet anywhere at any time. And it's initiate and make contact. And as I've sat back now and kind of digested it and talked to Al Riveron for a while, I think what we're going through now is a bit of an overreaction. I think back to 4 years ago when they put in the crown of the helmet rule with the runner and the person, the defender that's trying to tackle the runner. Everybody was saying we were going to have so many fouls. And, in fact, I think there's been 6 called in 4 years. So I do think it's a bit of overreaction, but it is a significant change in the interpretation. I think it will lead to more fines than it will actually fouls, although there will certainly be, I think, an uptick on the crown of the helmet hits. But I think, Kirk, to say that it's going to happen, on every time there's blocking in interior line play and that type of thing is nonsensical. Common sense will seek its level, and I think it will be okay. But, they're making a huge point of emphasis on this, and it is somewhat going to change things.
Mike, watching both games, the college game and the NFL game. I know, watching you on Sundays, it's the NFL, but I love listening to you on Saturdays, whether I'm broadcasting the game or I'm done and I, hear a rule that you're explaining in the college game as a rules analyst for college football as well. Mike, how does this differ, this targeting rule in the NFL, the changes from the rule in college, their targeting rule, which is more of a defenseless player? Is the NFL really just kind of taking a book out of the college ranks and trying to have their own adaptation or to the rule in the NFL?
To a degree, yes, because the college rule is 2 parts. There is one part for the defenseless player,
Correct.
And then there is the second part, which basically says you can't lead with the crown of your helmet, period. And it applies to all players and all, hitting all opponents. So that's really, that part of it is what the NFL is saying now without the ejection, without the automatic ejection portion, which college, that's my big objection, is that, you end up getting, players ejected for what I call marginal hits, not flagrant hits. And the NFL will never go down that line. I mean, it's two different games. You're talking about 46 active players versus 100 in college could be, or more. So they'll never go down that line. Now, they threw out the notion of these helmet hits, which I really believe is only to say that if the officials do, on a leading with the helmet hit, if they do go ahead and eject the player on the field, then the office in New York can take a look at it and say, hey, did it in fact merit an ejection? I don't think, and I'm sure that we're not going to get to where college has gone to where replay can stop the game if a hit wasn't called, and then put a personal foul on. I'd really caution, using the word targeting. And if I was the NFL, I would say don't ever use targeting because it leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. But I think that it is adapting part of the college rule without the ejections. And please, I heard some things this morning. Oh my God, 10 players are going to get ejected in the first quarter. It's not going to happen. It's not going to be automatic. There's going to be an uptick, but New York is only going to get involved with these ejections in what I have read so far, and that is if the officials call a personal foul for a non-football act. So we're not talking about a pulling guard hitting a corner coming around the edge, and that's a football play. Ejections that happen on the field or don't get called, I should say, personal fouls that are called on the field, but do not the officials don't eject the player. That the league can only step in if it's a Gronkowski type thing where you pile on the back of a guy, or a Mike Evans thing when you just come racing across the field and nail a guy who's standing still on the sidelines. I think we're overreacting a little bit.
Yeah, but that's what we like. We love to do that, Mike. You know that.
Oh, well, that's true. That's true.
Yes.
That is true. And I must admit, the last 3 days I was actually fishing up in Oregon, and when I looked at my phone and I read that that they had passed this new rule, I think I missed a good take on a steelhead because I was pretty shocked because I didn't expect it to happen. But then when I talk to people and kind of look at it from the historical aspect of the lowering the crown of the helmet rule, I really, it's going to change. There's no doubt, but I don't think that they have ruined the game to any degree.
NFL on Fox Rules analyst and former NFL VP of officiating Mike Pereira joining the Rich Eisen Show. Kirk Morrison in for Rich. Also follow Mike on Twitter at Mike Pereira. Obviously, you mentioned you talk to people around the league and current officials. Is this something, is there any gray area with current officials that you've talked to with the passing of this rule? And what kind of video will they be showing to the players in training camp? Because I know there has to be a video behind this, and I know it's going to be coming out soon, but what kind of video will we see in terms of this rule that the players will see and also the fans?
Well, what they're going to see is what is illegal and what is legal. I mean, you have to, in a video, you have to be clear and definitive about what is illegal, and then you have to be clear and definitive as to what is not. So if there's a corner, for example, that's bracing for contact from a pulling guard and he lowers his head to protect himself, that's not initiating contact. He's trying to defend himself. They'll show instances like that, but it's an important video. It's a very important video, to show the teams and the clubs. And they're going out now. They're starting now. They're going to visit all 32 teams and the entire coaching staff of all 32 teams. And they will take this video. They will leave it for them to show their players. And then when the officials go to the training camps in August, they'll also then personally show it to the players and answer any questions. It's going to be met with disdain, I think, from the current players. It changes the game to where it takes money out of their pocket conceivably for something that is incidental, but incidental to me is not what the league is looking for. So this video, if it's clear, and you know, they always told me, hey, don't put iffy ones on there. Put ones that nobody goes, oh yeah, that's that. Or, oh yeah, that's not. But that's probably a smaller percentage of the number of hits, clearly a smaller percentage of the number of hits that, you know, people will say, well, what about that one? And then you kind of go, ugh. And I say this, really, I say it really substantially. I've always felt this way. If you look at a hit, and I've always said this about this college targeting rule, and you have to go, is it or isn't it? Then it isn't. And I would hope that the league leans in that direction.
NFL on Fox rules analyst Mike Pereira. A couple more for you, Mike. The revision to the catch rule. And I know this is something that me and you have discussed on length many different times. I know what the rule was. If a player was in the act of going to the ground while catching it, he had to survive the ground. Now the rule has been changed as he got possession, 2 feet, makes a football act, all of that. Do you think we'll see more fumbles now or more incomplete passes? I think there's still a little bit of gray area in there, Mike, that still was going to need to be clarified, especially when that play finally happens during the season.
Well, there is gray area. I thought they did a good job of taking this notion of having to survive the ground out of it. No, now look you're still going to be going to the ground, but
right.
The fact of the matter is that you have to have the 3 elements to get a catch. And that's the same whether you're on the feet and not going to the ground or if you're on your way to the ground. And it's pretty simple. It's control, 2 feet or another body part, and then a football move, which if you're upright could be 3 steps. The third step could be turning upfield and extending. I mean, they did a pretty good job, although they've done that before. But I was concerned about that last portion of it, that, right. You know, or have time to do a football move even though you don't do it. You know, which becomes then the real gray area. I think it's clear because Jesse James's, you know, play with Pittsburgh, you know, that should have been a touchdown.
Correct.
It smelled like a touchdown, felt like a touchdown. So did Des Bryant's catch many years ago. So did Calvin Johnson back in 2010. So we got off track, and I say we because I was a part of that, but we got off track with the rule. And I think because of replay, you know, I actually argue with Dean Blandino, my good buddy who I
yes.
work with at Fox. You know, he thinks that, you know, they made it simple for the officials and made it understandable for the officials, and now you're making it more gray. And I argued with him and said, how can you say you made it simple with the officials when what did the officials rule with Jesse James? They ruled touchdown. What did they rule with Des Bryant on the field? They ruled catch. What did they rule with Calvin Johnson? One ruled touchdown. The other one came over kind of sheepishly and incomplete, and then they stayed with incomplete. So officials make calls on the field quite often based on the eye test. It's instinct. It's how it feels. Did he have it long enough? And to me, that ought to be left right there. And replay ought to be out of that, trying to make this subjective decision at a different speed than the officials actually see it. I really think it's a mistake leaving replay in there. It's better. I do think it's better. I disagree again with Dean. I talked to him last night, and he tried to convince me that it wasn't better. I think it's better. It will be clear, and it will take those ones that look so much like a catch, and they'll leave them as a catch, and I think we'll all be better for it, actually.
Well, just know I'll be blowing up the Twitter handle of @Mike Pereira on the first fumble I see during the NFL season.
And there will be more fumbles
yes.
now, but a lot of them will be down by contact.
Right.
Because if he gets control and he's touched on the way to the ground, and then the ball comes out after he hits the ground after a football move, then it would be down by contact. But hey, you know, if you're a receiver on the way to the ground and you want to stretch to gain another yard, go ahead. You're doing it at your own risk. If you just want to, you know, secure the ball and go to the ground with the ball securely in your possession, then you know you're going to have a catch. But you're going to be at a risk of fumble if you weren't touched and you try to reach to gain an additional yard.
Hey, Mike, I won't hold you back from the lake anymore. You can go back to catching.
Hey, listen, when I heard you were guest hosting, I drove all the way back from Medford, Oregon to Sacramento, California, so I could not even think about catching another steelhead and get to talk to my buddy Kirk.
Oh, I appreciate the time, Mike. Have a good one, man. Talk to you soon.
You got it.
All right, that was Mike Pereira, NFL on Fox.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.